How do you contact fire? When you are on fire, don't brag that you can pray for 4 hours. When you are on fire, don't brag the way your body is shaped when you are praying. That does not profit you. That is childishness. Because every realm you enter in the spirit has an impact on you. There's a realm you enter, you start laughing. You can't control it, no matter what you do. But you can't laugh every day you are praying. There's a realm you enter, you start crying. You can't control it. But you can't cry every day you are praying. There's a realm you enter, you start shouting like a madman. But you can't shout every day you are praying. There's a realm you enter, the intensity there will burn you so much that it will squeeze you. But you can't be squeezed every day you are praying. There's a realm you enter, you can't stand, you will run. But you can't be running every day you are praying. So when you find a mature believer, he doesn't hold the posture, he finds the realm. It's the realm that determines the operation. So when you are looking for fire or when you have fire, don't pursue things that don't have value. Test your fire to the degree that is able to shift demonic influence. When you come to a place, censor that place and find out what the impact of your presence has there. When you have fire, check the weight that your prayer commands. I will not pray for 6 hours and I don't see a vision. It doesn't engender transformation and it doesn't change anything. That's why many people pray. Brings a deaf person, they become humble. Because their prayer only has weight in time. It doesn't have weight in impact. Go and find most of the generals and most of the places where great things are happening. They sit them down and teach them truth. So whatever they are doing it from the place of understanding. I'm not against any of those things. All of them happen to me. And they happen to the people I raise and train. Some of us are the greatest advocates of prayer. But we don't want you to do it wrongly. Because destinies are at stake. Don't do what you enjoy. Do what is right. Because your destiny does not depend on what you enjoy. It depends on what is right. And so when you contact fire, you are able to bring government. Because you can dislodge princes. When you contact fire, your priesthood can create impact. When you contact fire, you have received an inheritance. And over time it will show. When you receive an inheritance in BSU here, a point will come, everybody will know that you are a man of God. And for those of you who are not in ministry, it will affect your results, your academics. It will affect the level of favor on your life. And then when you come out of the university, that thing will make you stand out. It's an inheritance. And you will not only stand out, anybody you make contact with, it will rub off on him. That is the proof that something supernatural is at work in your life. You can't be struggling and I keep making contact with you and it doesn't affect your status in society. You can't be seeking God and I keep making contact with you and it doesn't affect the authority of God on your life. It means what I'm doing is drama. Because when you come around men like David that had fire, 400 broken men can become warriors. Because there is something supernatural there. There's an inheritance that have been received. And finally, when you have fire, you can bring witness. How do you contact fire? Number one, become a sacrifice. Every time a sacrifice is placed on the altar, the fire falls. These are auto mechanisms of the spirit. And this is most important than what we will do here this morning. When you find men that are always on fire, it's because they are living sacrifices. You can contact fire and lose it. But when you become a sacrifice, you are burning all your life. So the secret of being on fire unending is to become a sacrifice. Because God responds to sacrifices by fire. Let me show you a few scriptures. 1 Kings 18 verse 38. Everything that was happening, God was not moved until the sacrifice was placed on the altar. The moment Elijah placed the sacrifice on the altar, the Bible said the fire of God fell and consumed it. God responds to sacrifice, but God's response to sacrifice is in the similitude of fire. And so when you find a man burning, that man is a sacrifice. Before you desire the fire, be ready to pay the price. It takes sacrifice to contact fire. If there is no sacrifice, there can never be fire on your life. Many people think fire is a gift. There are many gifts of the Spirit. Fire is not one of them. Fire only responds to sacrifice. And until a man becomes a sacrifice, he can never see the fire of God. In Leviticus chapter 9 verse 24, the same thing happened in a replica fashion. The moment sacrifice came on the altar, fire descended. In 1 Chronicles 21:26, the moment sacrifice came on the altar, fire descended. This is why Paul was teaching. And Paul said in Romans chapter 12 verse 1, he said, I beseech you, dearly beloved, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God. Holy because God will separate it unto himself. The moment you present your body as a sacrifice, God makes that body holy. And the way God makes it holy is to put his fire upon it. And so that body can no longer carry out any function except to the glorification of God. And so when you find a man burning, the secret of his ever increasing intensity is sacrifice. And the way sacrifice works is that God will diagnose your soul and find out the impact of your fall. He will now place a demand on your soul. The demand God places is to mortify the body. Because God has seen that the body is a slave of the soul. And the soul is where the impact of the fall is. And so when God wants to take the body, he diagnoses the soul. And when he finds the doorway through which the body is enslaved, he puts a consecration upon that doorway. The consecration God puts on your soul is your sacrifice. You will find somebody else, God discovers he has lost. God will now tell him, you won't marry until you are 35. Now, God needs you to marry because you need a wife to help you because of your irrational decision-making process. You now look at somebody else who God says don't marry till you are 35. You now say you will do the same thing. You will die. The sacrifice is based on the effect of the fall. He has seen that this man is still suffering loss and marriage won't stop it. And so for the first 35 years of his life, he demands absolute purity and consecration. And so that thing that man is doing will be a burden to his soul. Because everywhere he sees women, his body rises. And so God will tell him that energy that you will meet when you see women, you will bring that energy to the altar. And so that man will discover the only thing that will tame his body is to pray in tongues all night. And so he'll be praying in tongues all night, not because he wants to see a vision, because he wants to tame the body. Now that prayer all night becomes a sacrifice. You will pray like that, your result will not be like that man. Because every time that man stands at night, in order to tame the body in the day, God sees it as honor to him. And that honor becomes a sacrifice on the altar. When you discover God's consecration demand on you and you start keeping it, the fire will now rest. And so when this consecration becomes a law over you, God sees that law as sacrifice. A young generation is a generation that prides in revelations and gifts of the Spirit. But a generation that has spiritual understanding is a generation that knows the way of sacrifice. And so when you find such people, they know God can choose you by his sovereignty. You don't need to do anything. But they know for God to walk with you, you need to do everything. You will give everything it takes for God to walk with you. You don't need to do anything for God to choose you. God will decide to choose you. That's why Judas Iscariot did nothing but for you to remain with God. For God to walk with you and for God to rest upon you, you will do everything. And everything is called sacrifice. It's a consecration requirement. The keeping of God is the fire of the Holy Spirit, and it resonates on consecration. There's a realm you enter where your revelation no longer counts. It is your sacrifice that counts. When you show up, they will not find out what you are saying. They will look at you. It's in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. And when they saw the Lord, they didn't ask him about his gift. They didn't ask him about his doctrine. They looked upon him and they found out that the man was a man of unclean lips. And so because there was no sacrifice to tame his tongue, his authority as a prophet was about to be taken off. But because of mercy, his tongue was purged. Somebody will be purged tonight. And the way you will be purged is that those consecrations you violated 3 years ago, God will reenact it. There were some of you who came on campus here, God told you, until you walk out, you will never have a girlfriend. There are some of you, God told you, until you walk out, you will never tell anybody I love you. But all your friends in 200 level began to boast with boyfriends and girlfriends. They began to change ribbons. They began to fix eyelashes. And when they asked you, when you asked them, they said their boyfriends gave them. You now started feeling lonely. That loneliness will be your sacrifice. And so when you feel lonely, you will present that loneliness to God. And as you present that loneliness to God, when the oracles of God appear, God will see that as a sacrifice and He will rest upon you. You want to find out how men become powerful with God? These are the doorways. You don't become powerful with God just by cheaply associating with somebody. You don't become powerful with God simply by doing something that is born out of your senses. You become powerful with God because you pay the price of sacrifice. And when God sees it, He knows that you are dependable. And so the way God validates you to your generation is that He puts His fire upon you. Anything you touch burns. And it is the flame that burns that your generation celebrates. No generation celebrates the face of a man. Every generation celebrates the kind of flame that comes out of you. There are those that carry the flame of purity. There are those that carry the flame of power. There are those that carry the flame of influence. There are those that carry the flame of gifts of the Spirit. God will keep burning upon them. And their generation will surround them celebrating. You want to carry fire, you must make up your mind to accept the demands of sacrifice. The second way to carry fire is by hunger for God. Hunger. Hunger. You see, as the deer panted after the waters, so my soul longeth after thee, in a dry and in a thirsty land where no water is. And so when a man becomes hungry for God, separation becomes his signature. The reason men are separated unto God is not because it's a regular routine to have retreats. That is important. It's a good spiritual discipline. But the reason men are separated to God is because there is a hunger in their spirit that cannot be satisfied. They thank God for the praise and worship. They thank God for the prayer session. They thank God for the word session. But there is a place where they go to receive the keys of the Almighty. In that sacred place where no other person is permitted to come. That is where the business of intimacy is routed. You will find that place in God where no other person is permitted to come. John said, that which we have heard, that which we have seen, that which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled of the word of life. They heard it first. A preacher preached it intelligently. You have come here this morning. You are hearing me preaching the oracles of God. They have seen men demonstrate it. But a point came. They say, I don't want to go through the medium of a preacher. I don't want to go through the medium of a service. The same way you appeared to Moses on the mountains of Horeb, I want to find you that way. So the burdens and the hunger for encounter begins to drive them. And sometimes they will trek to the center of the forest where there are no noise. The noise of internet, the noise of Instagram, the noise of friends. Even your best friend can become a noisemaker. There is a level hunger we get to. Even your pastor can become a noisemaker, because what he's preaching cannot satisfy the thirst of your soul. And so even though you honor your pastor, you will turn away and find out that God that dwells in the midst of the fire. The Bible said Moses stepped into the deep darkness where God was. There's a realm a man gets to where it is only him and God. And he will tell him, I will not go until I see you. Show me thy glory. Show me thy glory. Show me thy glory. When a man gets there, he becomes a candidate of fire.